Hello, I am Jake Collins, and this is my commentary for the 6th episode of The Mummy the Animated Series, The Orb of Aten. As anticipated, we're not in Australia, but we are in fact in Egypt. I like this bit here of Rick and Alex climbing the pyramid and talking about their feelings a bit. Being back on the Mummy's home turf makes me nervous, and it's interesting here how they actually bother to explain/excuse the absence of Uncle Jonathan in this episode. In the Deep Blue Sea, episode 4, he just wasn't there and nobody remarked on it. He was actually in the previous episode, Eruption, although I didn't mention him on my commentary because he did practically nothing. Certainly didn't have any of his moments. Now, Evie here is going on about Alexander the Great and his ship's logs again, completely brushing over anything we had about Captain Cook and Australia in the previous episode, as indeed I predicted. But the Scrolls of Thebes only get mentioned briefly here in this opening scene, and then we shift our focus to the title MacGuffin of this particular episode, the Orb of Aten, and there's half of it. The ship's logs say a great treasure was here. Oh, it wasn't the Scroll of Thebes. It was this half of the Orb of Aten, and everything in this episode is about the Orb of Aten, hence the title. Imhotep forgets all about the manacle and the scrolls in this one, and is simply after using the orb to restore his powers to full strength. And the O'Connells are trying to stop him. It's rather like Season 2 in that way. But it's okay because I really like this episode. Despite the fact that it is named after and centres around this rather extreme MacGuffin. Quite a long opening scene this, isn't it? So perhaps now's the time to begin my review just before the opening narration begins. An excellent showcase for this series at its best. 10 out of 10. This episode is brilliant, despite the fact that the titular Orb of Aten is another one of those pointless MacGuffin artefacts that really adds nothing to the show in itself. The New York stuff with Alex, Rick and Evie is all excellent, particularly their character interplay and family teamwork. Alex demonstrates, not for the first or last time of course, that his greatest attributes are his own innate skills, both physical and mental, particularly during the museum sequence. I also like the intriguing allusions to Rick's past, including plenty of inspiration from the movie canon. Imhotep and Weasler are more entertaining than usual here. It's nice to see some care and attention paid to them and their dynamic for a change. Yes, a pretty full and accurate review there compared to what was going through my mind as I was watching this episode just now. I did like a lot of the family teamwork and, as I said, their character interplay, family dynamics. I think that works really well in this one between the three O'Connells. Imhotep and Weasler, I mean, they have some pretty nice moments in this, as nice as moments between them ever get. As I say, Imhotep, in his interactions with other characters, including his lackey, Colin Weasler, it's sometimes, usually, rather lacking. So that's why I say a showcase for the series at its best, because it does have the best of all the character interplay, really. The only thing missing, of course, being Uncle Jonathan and his interplay with other characters, particularly Alex, but we get a bit of insight into their relationship. My uncle taught me cricket. I mean, that's a nice image, isn't it? Alex is going to give us later on of him and Jonathan doing cricket together when Alex was younger. I'm sure Alex enjoyed that a lot, and so did Jonathan. And of course that is one of the occasions where I think the writer of this episode, Nick Dubois, I happened to notice he was called, as I was watching the end titles. Wasn't entirely sure if Alex was American or English. Well, he's half and half, really, isn't it? But if he was going to speak with an American accent or not. When Rick whispers to Babe Ruth, it's a British thing, Babe Ruth might be thinking, oh, I didn't realise your son was British, but there we go, never mind, it still works pretty well. And we start off on that little sequence of things with Evie whispering to Alex there, it's an American thing. And here's Imhotep and Weasler doing their very own version of Titanic, except that Weasler ends up getting dangled off the prow, which is quite like Titanic at the other end of the ship, I suppose. And here we are in New York. The world's tallest parking spot, the Empire State Building, the world's tallest building for over 40 years, but how they've grown and grown since then. Nice family interplay and dynamics here. Rick saying, I can handle your mom, I can sweet talk her, better let me do the talking and get her to go around New York with us and have some fun instead of going to a stuffy museum. But then Evie wants to do it and suggests doing it anyway. Rick's like, oh, told you I could handle it, and Alex smiles, and that's nice family interplay. This is quite a nice New York montage. Of course, this is very funny here. Alex and Evie greatly enjoy the roller coaster, but Rick doesn't. He's scared of the roller coaster despite all the leaping around and falling down mine shafts and things that he usually does. He doesn't like it in a recreation environment riding on the roller coaster. Very good. Here's the Book of Thoth at the museum, which is going to play a big part in the episode, and I wonder if Evie's ever going to fess up to the museum that she dropped it in the Atlantic Ocean and can't find it, or if she's just going to leave and hope no one notices. And here we go, we're going to meet Babe Ruth, and this, of course, is Maurice LaMarche. It's hard to find a cartoon without him in it somewhere. And he's here doing his Babe Ruth impression, or perhaps it's just his very best Brooklyn accent, which works very well as a Babe Ruth impression, I'm sure I'm right in saying. And here's where we get this intriguing insight into Rick's backstory and some nice links to the movies there. Babe Ruth hasn't seen Rick since St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys, and last he heard Rick had run off and joined the Foreign Legion. I'm in the archaeology game now. That all fits in some way with the movie canon and backs up this idea that I always like to have in my mind, that there's a similar sequence of events leading up to the cartoon, to the ones we've seen in the two movies, but it's not exactly the same. It's AU. It's slightly different, but there are many similar aspects, and this seems to back that up. So I do like that inclusion of Rick's past. Little references and teasers about Rick's past there. Very good. And as we see here, Alex is a chip off the old O'Connell block, and he's so much more. Of course, he can whack a baseball over Babe Ruth's head without any trouble at all. Alex enjoys Babe Ruth's hot dog stuffing your face antics here with a nice little smile. Yeah, I like that scene. And here's a scene that was held up to me before I'd even seen the series of why the series was or seemed to be good, funny. Imhotep catches a New York taxi. It's funny, the beginning there, calling, trying to flag down the taxi. Taxi, it's not working. And Imhotep does what Imhotep does best by stepping out into the road, stopping the taxi manually and throwing out the person who's already in it. Very amusing. Are you sure you've never been to New York before? Well, perhaps he hasn't, but he fits into New York quite well. Very good, very quirky, very funny. Again, Rick and Alex discussing their feelings there in the baseball tunnel. I like that. Do you regret not becoming a professional baseball star, Dad? Oh, then I wouldn't have met your mom. It's just nice little bits of family dynamics and interplay and characterization. It works really well in this episode. Such a stark contrast to that terrible movie, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, where Alex, or a very different version of Alex from this offshot of Alex from The Mummy Returns, hates his parents. This is much better. Much more pleasing to watch. Much more pleasing to engage with. The museum sequence, I mentioned that in my review. And here we are with it. Sand is a telltale sign that Imhotep's around. Reminds me of Merman and his occasional telltale seaweed that he leaves behind him when he walks in He-Man. Very much the same phenomenon, actually. Imhotep and his occasional telltale sand. Oh, and he's already found the other half of the Orb of Aten. What a surprise. This is where it really struck me how this is rather like Season 2. Here's Imhotep with a MacGuffin being generally evil. He's not thinking at all about the Manacle of Osiris, even though it's right there in front of him, and the Scrolls of Thebes at the moment. But it's okay, they can get away with it for a couple of episodes in this season. Slight detour. It really is a pit stop, this one, on the search for the Scrolls of Thebes. But as an episode, it comes together perfectly and works really well. So it's okay that it's all about this MacGuffin. Tut's like, I'm not going to attack those insects, I only attack cobras. Or perhaps all snakes, in fact. And of course Evie comes up with the idea here of nicking the Book of Thoth and using its magic to help them out, and the museum's never going to get it back, nor indeed that Orb of Aten half that they had. And it was only on loan. Someone's going to be very cross about that. Alex attempts to use the manacle here, it won't obey him, so he falls back on his natural skills, which, as I say in my review, always serve him best. He throws this hook, makes this whale carcass collapse and swallow all the bugs, and Chris Marquette does that excellent delivery there, snug of some bugs in a whale, and he makes the line quirky and fun and amusing, and Alex very endearing saying it, even though it's a completely stupid line, and probably designed to be a bit stupid, but it could have come across as very flat. But it didn't. He made it work excellently. Another example there, a particular example, but it's almost constant, of Chris Marquette doing some excellent voice work and really giving the show the heart that it needs, with Alex at its core. Just taking care of our bug problem, Alex says. Rick says, if only you could take care of him, referring to Imhotep, who's just turned up. Well, don't worry, Alex will take care of Imhotep eventually, but it's not quite time yet. This T-Rex sequence goes on a bit, I thought, when I was watching this just now. It was one of a couple of bits that made me think, well, yeah, this episode isn't perfect. I don't watch it and not ever think, oh, well. But it's certainly worth 10 out of 10, as I say, an excellent showcase for the series at its best. I'll mention that other bit that I think is a bit much and a bit silly when we see it. And this T-Rex skeleton animation thing, I mean, it's not too much, it's not too silly, but I just think it drags on too long. The Book of Thoth, Evie is now treating it as her own personal property. And will continue to do so. And they're off to the Statue of Liberty, aren't they? Weasler attempted to do a bit of good banter interplay with Imhotep there. Does the gentleman need a taxi? And this taxi he's nicked. But of course, Imhotep doesn't really join in or interact, which is a bit of a shame. But it's true, their dynamic is given more thought and time on screen than usual, and it's nice to see. Imhotep and Weasler are more entertaining than usual here. It's nice to see some care and attention paid to them, and their dynamic for a change, yes. Some care and attention. Not a lot, but some, and I appreciate that. Now here's the bit where Rick and Evie are saying, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, and Alex is like, well, what am I going to do for the denouement? And Evie's like, you're going to stay here. And do we think that's going to happen? Oh no. You can't have Alex stay there and do nothing for the denouement. As I say, Alex is a man of action, and he's not going to stand by and miss out on the action. But it would be bad for the show as well. Alex is more and more becoming the core of the show, the central character, and rightly so. Here's this bit that I think is a bit stupid. This Book of Thoth has this spell that can actually move the moon and create this eclipse. Just from Evie reading out a bit. I think that's taking it a bit far. I mean, she says it's a spell of darkness. It didn't have to be an actual eclipse using the actual moon. It could have just been clouds. That would have been better. But certainly not enough to deduct a point from the episode. And there's the bit where the Book of Thoth is lost in the Atlantic Ocean. So there we go. You're down 2 artefacts, that museum, and there's nothing you can do about it. And here's Alex, hang on, Mum, and he comes to save her. I think they're already drawing his shoulders broader, you know. He's growing up in many ways. Again, he tries to use the manacle. It does zip. So what does he do? He thinks, well, I'm just going to go ahead and save the day anyway. And Alex uses this sledgehammer to smash the Orb of Aten to smithereens as it falls. And he's drawing on his previous baseball experiences there. So that's a nice little tie-in to earlier in the episode. Alex chucks the sledgehammer aside there. I'm done with that. So that's a couple of MacGuffins now that Alex has smashed to smithereens. The Staff of Set and the Orb of Aten. And a good thing too, they can't come back and plague other episodes in a MacGuffin-y way. I like this closing scene at the baseball stadium. Alex and Evie cheering for Rick. Alex coaching Evie in how to be a baseball supporter. It's a baseball thing, so perhaps Nick Dubois does realise that there are many American things about Alex, even though he may not have been sure, Nick may not have been sure of Alex's accent. But as I say, as it should be, it's Chris Marquette's natural, very nice American accent used so well to bring the character to life so compellingly. Great there, the expression on Alex's face and in his voice, rooting for Rick to hit the home run. Great stuff, great family dynamics, and an absolutely great episode. And well done, Nick Dubois. You took it and you did all the best things you could with it. So I've only praised for you there. I'll have only praise for the next episode as well, I think, pretty much. Looking at my score on the review sheet in front of me. And hopefully you'll join me again for that episode commentary. And the episode is called The Black Forest.